I spent 6 hours scrolling through Instagram, watching lives I wished were mine. 6 hours. That's how long it takes to drive from London to Paris, to watch 2 Lord of the Rings movies back to back, to read a short novel that might change your life. But instead, I fed the insatiable beast that whispers, "Everyone is doing better than you." Maybe you recognize this voice too. What if I told you that right now, in this very moment, you're being robbed, not by a thief in the night, but by something more insidious, a digital parasite feeding on your potential, one scroll at a time. The average person spends nearly 2.5 hours daily on social media. That's 38 days a year. By the time you're 60, you'll have sacrificed over 6 years of your life to platforms designed not to enrich you, but to extract your attention, your data, and ultimately, your sense of self-worth. Theodore Roosevelt never knew Instagram, but he understood our dilemma perfectly when he wrote, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Tonight, I want to explore the prison we've built for ourselves, and more importantly, how to break free. Have you ever noticed how after scrolling through social media, you don't feel better, you feel worse? There's science behind this. A 2018 study from the University of Pennsylvania found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day led to significant reductions in loneliness and depression. Think about that. The less time spent watching others' curated lives, the more content you become with your own. I remember when I first downloaded Instagram in 2012, it seemed harmless, just photos of friends' dogs and sunsets. But platforms evolve. The algorithms grew sophisticated. Soon, my feed wasn't showing me what I wanted to see. It was showing me what would keep me scrolling. Beautiful strangers living seemingly perfect lives. Entrepreneurs closing million-dollar deals from beach hammocks. Fitness models with physiques that seemed impossibly attainable. But here's what the platforms don't want you to know. It's all an illusion. Not just partly fake, fundamentally misleading. Remember when influencer Natalia Taylor staged an entire luxury Bali vacation using photos taken at her local IKEA? Or when Forbes celebrated entrepreneurs have been exposed running companies deep in debt? And yet, our brains aren't evolved to process this distinction. When we see these images, our subconscious accepts them as reality. We're not comparing ourselves to real people. We're comparing ourselves to fictions. It's like feeling inadequate because you can't fly like a superhero. There's a particularly cruel twist to this comparison problem. The psychologist Leon Festinger developed social comparison theory in 1954, showing that humans have an innate drive to evaluate themselves by comparing to others. But he couldn't have anticipated a world where we'd have access to billions of comparison points, algorithmically selected to make us feel insufficient. When I scroll through my feed and see the top 0.1% of human experiences, the weddings, promotions, vacations, and achievements, I'm not seeing reality. I'm seeing highlights from billions of lives compressed into a toxic concentrate. I want you to think about your greatest achievement, maybe graduating college, landing your dream job, or creating something meaningful. Remember how it felt. Now imagine, moments after that achievement, someone showed you 10 people who did it better, faster, with more style or recognition. Would that tarnish your joy? This is what we voluntarily subject ourselves to every day. The costs go beyond just feeling bad. There's opportunity cost. What you could have created in those hours spent consuming. There's also the fragmentation of attention. Studies show it takes 23 minutes to fully refocus after a distraction. And perhaps most destructively, there's the erosion of intrinsic motivation. Let me tell you about my friend David. He was a talented writer who started posting his work online. At first, the likes and comments were validating, but slowly, something changed. He began writing not what moved him, but what generated engagement. His metrics improved, but the soul of his work dimmed. One day, he admitted to me, "I can't remember the last time I wrote something without imagining how it would perform online." This is what psychologists call extrinsic motivation, doing things for external rewards rather than internal fulfillment. And it's poison to creativity and authentic growth. I've experienced this myself. For years, I measured my self-worth by metrics, Followers gained, likes received. I became a performer in my own life rather than a participant. Each experience wasn't fully lived. It was documented, filtered, captioned. I wasn't creating memories. I was creating content. And in the process, I lost touch with what actually made me happy versus what made for a good post. The philosopher Alan Watts described this perfectly. We thought of life by analogy, with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. But we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played. Social media turns life into a destination rather than a journey, and then keeps moving the destination further away. So how do we escape this comparison trap? How do we reclaim our potential from the attention merchants? First, we need to recognize that this isn't a fair fight. These platforms employ thousands of the world's brightest minds, armed with unprecedented data about human psychology. Their business model depends on maximizing your time spent, not your well-being gained. As Tristan Harris, former Google design ethicist, says, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. But awareness is just the beginning. Here's what actually works. I started by conducting a simple audit. For 1 week, I used screen time tracking to see exactly how many hours I was spending on social platforms. The number shocked me. 22 hours. Nearly a full day of my life that week, gone. Then I asked myself, what could I have done with those hours? Written half a book, learned to play a song on guitar, had deep conversations with friends who energize rather than deplete me. Next, I implemented what I call conscious constraints. I deleted social apps from my phone, allowing access only through my computer browser during specific times. I used website blockers to limit sessions to 30 minutes. And most importantly, I created sacred spaces. My bedroom became a phone-free zone. My morning routine became a social media-free time. The withdrawal was real. I found myself reaching for my phone hundreds of times a day out of pure habit. But within weeks, something remarkable happened. My attention span lengthened. I could read for hours again without the itch to check notifications. I found myself having ideas again. Creative thoughts that previously would have been drowned out by the noise of constant consumption. But the most profound change was in how I measured success. Without the constant external benchmarks of others' achievements, I had to define what progress meant for me. I started keeping a journal where I compared myself only to yesterday's version of me. Had I learned something new? Had I created rather than merely consumed? Had I been present with those I love? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote nearly 2,000 years ago, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The ancients understood something we've forgotten in our hyper-connected age, that looking outward for validation creates an unquenchable thirst, while looking inward can reveal an oasis of contentment that's been there all along. Your potential isn't measured in likes. Your worth isn't calculated in followers. And the most meaningful moments of your life will likely never be posted online at all. So I ask you, what could you create, become, or experience if you weren't constantly comparing yourself to others? What dreams have you abandoned because they wouldn't photograph well for the internet? What parts of yourself have you neglected because they don't fit your personal brand? The comparison complex is a prison of our own making. But unlike most prisons, this one has an unlocked door. You can walk out anytime. The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, every time you scroll, the clock of your life ticks. And potential, unlike content, is limited. What will you do with yours?